Hello and welcome everyone to this episode of ECPG Live, Outside the Inbox, Tech-Based Tools for Healing. My name is Tana Russell. I am the Assistant Director with the Evergreen Council on Problem Gambling. I am joined today by Jody Bechtold. She is a mental health and gambling clinician, CEO of the Better Institute, a group mental health practice in Pittsburgh, and also the author of the Gambling Disorder Treatment Handbook. So we are happy to have her with us. And as she's coming on, I just want to remind you, this is interactive in a couple of different ways. First, whether you are tuning in on Facebook or YouTube, you are welcome and encouraged to put comments and questions in the chat so that we can see who's here and address any questions you may have. Also, keep your cell phones handy because you're going to need it if you want to participate in an interactive activity we have with you live on this episode. So we're very excited about that. Thank you, Jody, for joining us. We really appreciate your time being on here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm just really excited about today. So thanks for everyone who's joining as well.
Yeah. Well, I know you and have gotten to work with you for many different activities, but some in the audience may not be as acquainted with you. So tell us a little bit about your background. What's your tech knowledge in this industry and what got you into it as a clinician? Give us a bit about your background there.
Yeah, well, I've been a clinician mostly focused on addiction and specifically gambling addiction for quite a few years. But going back to school was a career change for me. And in my first career out of undergrad, I actually was in the technology field. And I really enjoyed it, but I found that I either needed to get really specialized or I needed to exit the field because being a generalist wasn't enough. So my first early roots were involved in technology. I even had a company that was called Software Training Specialists. And this was back when I was like 24 years old. And I trained people how to use software on computers. So we don't even need to talk about how long ago that was, right? But I really started in tech, and then coming into the clinical world, it was a bit of an eye-opener because it felt behind the times. And I was like, wow, there's a little bit of a disconnect here. So it's been one of the things I've always focused on is how to bring technology into the clinical profession.
Well, let's start talking about that disconnect. What is it for you that struck you as a clinician that treatment and counseling services were kind of disconnected from a very digitized lifestyle that many of us live these days, working online, school online, recreational activities online, and then coming into a counselor's office?
Yeah, exactly. There's actually two completely but equally important answers. The first one is there's two types of technology in clinical. One is how do we, keep our notes and do our documentation and our billing. And for many professionals, that's what they thought that they were doing using technology, is incorporating that into kind of the back end of running their practice or their agency. And really, the challenge now is how do you move that to the forefront? And how do you make that part of what you're doing when you're interacting with your clients? So, for example, how do they schedule or get their first appointment with you? Is it still by telephone and, communicating a date and time? Or do you have software that sends them a text message confirming the date and the time that includes the address that they can just click on that takes them to their GPS if they then need to find out how to get to your office, right? So there's a lot that goes into the front end. And this was a more difficult conversation for a lot of people across the country pre-COVID. I think that COVID and post-COVID, people have really understood that we really need to think about all those tools that we use in the forefront, not just in how we support the practice behind the scenes. So that would be one major answer. You don't have the clipboard and the form and the pen and, hand it across and say, sign here. How do you do it in a digital with an IP address stamp on it and things like that? The second answer that I give is when was the last time that we potentially had almost 4 generations on our caseload at any given time? Right. So we have, starting from the younger ones, the Gen Zs, the millennials, the Gen Xers, the baby boomers, those can all be on our caseload at the same time, given the type of disorders or issues that we have expertise in. And you have to meet those individuals differently in your counseling or in your professional practice, because the Gen Zs and the millennials are going to be expecting something somewhat different than maybe the baby boomers are. So this is where generational characteristics matters in trying to understand how do you meet the people that you're serving and really have that connection with them.
Absolutely. What you made me think of is how people look for services, right?
Yes.
Phone book or digital phone book, check out people's websites. If they go to look up your practice and you don't have a website, you're immediately
it says a lot,
limiting a lot of who is going to find your services based on just their seeking for help tech preferences, or what does your website look like?
Yeah. And is it mobile friendly? Right?
Is it mobile friendly? Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly. There will be some people who make their decision on who to see based on simply the website, its look and feel, its functionality, before they ever know anything about the clinician behind it.
Yeah. I say that sometimes people will have 7 digital interactions before you ever meet them in person, even if it's over video in person. From how they Google you, do they look at Psych Today? Do they go to your website? Do you have an email that they can send a first email to? Do you respond, and how soon do you respond? Do you set them up in your client software that's a client portal, and they log in and they complete a bunch of information so that then they get a text message reminding them this is when your appointment is? And all that can happen without any human to human interaction.
Right. I'll say I am 35. I'm a millennial, but I'm kind of an old school millennial in a way. I was a little bit behind my peers as far as when I got a smartphone, and I didn't get a smartphone until I was married. But, for me, I'm comfortable with clipboards. I'm comfortable doing things on paper. It doesn't turn me off. But if I were to go into a place and they hand me a clipboard and I see something that's been photocopied 10,000 times and is hard to read, right? Yep. Even I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I couldn't have just done this online, right, where I could see it.
Yeah. And COVID really pushed a lot of us to rethink the way that we deliver care. And then in addition to that, we're not talking just an online shopping cart experience, right? For, a local store. We're talking now it has to be HIPAA compliant. It has to have all the safety features in order to be compliant. So it's very daunting for some people to make that conversion, but it's really important to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think either pre-COVID or post-COVID, I feel like for a lot of people that are in the helping profession, when they think of using tech for your clients, they think telehealth.
Yes.
Right. But you're going to be telling us about way beyond telehealth.
Yes.
Right. We're going to be talking about a lot more than just that. So this is going to get a little bit more creative. We're going to be talking about tools for engagement, for counseling activities, for recovery support, all kinds of things. And we even have an interactive tool we're going to use. Is this a good time to pull that up, or is there anything else you wanted to add?
I think
this
would be great. Yeah. So, Rob is showing on the screen. So you can do one of two things. You can go to the website menteecom and enter this code, or you can just take the camera feature of your phone and hover over it. You don't actually take a picture, and it will take you to a browser that pulls you right up to this as well.
So there you go. You just learned two new tools. You can use your camera to scan QR codes don't hit the picture thing, just let it hover until it reads it. Yep. Or you can go into mentee.com and then put in that code on the screen, 9029 9539. If
Right.
anybody is watching this on their phone, that's www.mentei.com.
And I can see then, different hearts that are starting to join. And so we can see when people are interacting. So I use this tool often when I'm doing some sort of a training or a workshop. It allows you to get people polled in anonymous way. So no one's name is there. So you can ask some pretty interesting or maybe sensitive questions, and people are able to honestly answer because it's completely anonymous. And so I find that to be really, really helpful. So with this, do I do it in a counseling session? No, I don't need to do that. But I could use this if I was running any type of a group, right? Whether it's a psychoeducation group, it's a support group, you name it. And it would allow people to actually answer honestly. That gives me more information about what's going on with that audience, whatever size audience that is. So here's an example. We'll go ahead and we'll move to the next slide. And everybody on their phone, it should start to update where you get to type in your answer to this question, right? What are some tech tools that have a positive effect on your learning, mental health, and your recovery? And what you can do is you can enter multiple times depending on how we've set up the slide. And you can see from people, podcasts are a really popular one. And here you can see, we don't know who entered that, right? And so you're allowed to then see anonymously people's answers. So it's a really great tool. There's a free version and then a paid version. So it just depends on, what your uses are. If you tend to do a lot of groups, you have a younger generation, you want to show them the intentional use of their digital devices. This would be a way to allow them to still use their device, but for something that's helpful at that time. So we're getting a lot of good answers here, right?
Excellent. And just in case anybody is signing in thinking, what the heck is going on? What have I tuned into? You'll see in the chat history, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, we've put in the chat there, go to www.mentee.com and enter that code that's listed, 90299539, and you'll be brought right into where we are now, and you can start entering your own thoughts on tech tools that have had a positive effect on your life, your learning, your mental health, your recovery, physical health even.
Yeah,
like
absolutely. When you think of, we are all using tech more than ever before. And so again, how do we stay intentional and have a positive effect when we are using it? We've even talked about how, when you can't be off tech, because it's work related or school related, then how can you be more intentional? So I love these answers. And you can see, it's just so easy to kind of assess what level of knowledge people have or how they interpreted a question you might have asked. So I find this to be really, really great. And I love these answers.
Yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. And if someone's already doing these kinds of things in their life in one way, and if their counselor says, hey, and did you know there's something similar that can help you accomplish your mental health goals, your recovery goals, can help you learn XYZ, whatever it is they've listed they want to learn, and it fits in with something they're already used to, they're already comfortable with doing it in some other way.
Yeah, these are great answers. And we're actually going to talk about quite a few. I love that TikTok has made its way into the mix here, right? Because that's a huge one. Again, finding a healthier way or a positive effect. If people are going to be on TikTok, we don't want them to be, spending 8 to 18 hours watching videos unless we've given them some sort of a homework assignment maybe that says, find some influencers that really speak and share a story that's very helpful and people can identify with. Yeah, and absolutely. The social media support groups is another one. That's a great way to help people, get connected with other people with the same either interest, issue, whatever, where geography is not a barrier, right?
Mm-hmm.
The mood trackers, the Insight Timer is a fantastic meditation app. Fitbit is kind of our Clorox name to generic bleach, right? So Fitbit, just any activity tracker, will give people more data on a day-to-day basis, especially like if you're working with sleep and making sure people are doing better with their sleep. Those would be great ways to do that. Great. Mm-hmm. Calm is another popular one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, these are good answers.
I'm a Reddit fan, so I like to browse Reddit usually at night. And a couple of the threads that I subscribe to are Our Problem Gambling, which I put in there, though it should be a lowercase r, and Our Stop Gaming.
Nice.
And these two threads, honestly, have actually contributed to several comments and images and things that have anonymously worked their way into training slides that I give on different presentations, because they so accurately depict today's culture around gaming and gambling and problem gaming, etc. And some sentiments that people feel. And in my opinion, they're some of the most positive things on the internet right now. Because there's so much love and support that goes into some of these sites on social media, where people around the country are cheering each other on in their recovery, and it's just peer-to-peer support, advice, links to resources, etc.
Yeah, and you're touching upon something really important that if we're talking about in a professional setting, we also have to have that knowledge and that confidence, right? Because we can't ask other people to do some of these things or, give it a try if we haven't given it a try. And I think that that's just so important to at least, I say all the time to colleagues, don't recommend an app unless you've already used it. And you've used it for more than 7 days, and so what it's like. Or don't recommend an app if you haven't signed in, and to make sure all the information that app is asking for, right?
Yeah.
So any of these things, we have to be willing to try ourselves.
Yeah, and also to be aware of, how does that app ask for money?
Yeah.
Right? Particularly with anybody in recovery from either gambling or gaming, is that app turning things into games that could be triggering? Because there's apps out there that are very educational and fantastic that can still include gambling simulation kind of elements, or be asking for something for a chance to win something, can be turning things into a game style thing that for many people are fine, but for an individual in recovery from something related to that, maybe that app is just not the right one for them. Yeah, right. Exactly. It doesn't mean they can't use apps, but you need to know what it's going to be marketing to them.
Well, and that's, no different than even the social media, the kind of the paid advertising that you would see inside of social media, and just really helping people navigate that, because it's more about problem solving than total avoidance sometimes. And it's about managing when we see something, how do we self-regulate or self-manage, because it's going to, some of these things are here to stay, and we can't avoid 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about different kinds of tools that can be used for different reasons. The first being engagement, be it It could be a ECPG live engagement, like using Menti for this. It could be a training. It could be a class. It could be a group. It could be parents with their kids, whatever. What's a way, some tools that help to get people engaged with you in some sort of activity?
Yeah, I mean, again, you're right. We're covering some of this just by, showing Mentee and even showing the answers that people are giving, and I'm curious if people want to put in the comments what they find as useful or some tools that really generate that interaction and engagement. And, again, Mentee is a great one. You can use it in a group setting. You can, we have this kind of on delay. You can also do, polling questions. You can do things even through your social media page that get people to respond to a question that maybe they go, I want to know more about their group practice or what they do, right? And so you can think of it that way. Then that's all outside of, working with someone directly one-on-one. In our case, counseling, working with people individually or as couples, I have found even being able to share, like even do screen share and share something on the screen or email PDFs of what we might have done in the old world of handing them, a paper file or anything like that. So, just some really interesting ways to keep people engaged is a great, thought. What do you do? Is there an app you can refer to? So one example that I like is the Gottman Method, right? We're talking right in your backyard. John Gottman and the Gottman Method for couples and relationship counseling. I love what they've done. They've created an app for couples to download. They have a podcast. They have PDFs that we can then email to them so that they have the same information. We can screen share. We can refer them to different YouTube videos to watch either during session or between. Like I just named 5 different things that are tools to keep a couple engaged and interacting with each other between the relationship counseling session. That's huge, right? When we don't have a lot of time, now we're doing that intentional use of our devices for something very helpful. So that would be another example, but curious what other people might say in the comments or chat.
Mm-hmm. One thing you just made me think of was the 5 love languages survey. And I don't know if you know, or if anybody in the audience might know, but I don't know. I'm just a big fan of the 5 love languages. And I'm wondering if there's a digital version of those questions. They'd usually like come in the back of the book. People could scribble their answers down. But that's one of those things that would make a great digital survey. If there's not one out there already, you could definitely make one.
Yep. No, it's out there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There you go.
And it's one of those that, you can even assign for someone to do outside of this session and then ask them to email you the results and things like that. So yeah. Yeah, it's
fantastic.
Really cool. Uh-huh.
And then people can fill it out for themselves and for their family members and compare answers and generate this great conversation about what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah. And, again, going back to Gottman as an example, they even have an assessment that the 2 people that are seeking services would complete. And the clinician gets a full report, but then the couple gets their report as well. And you think about the engagement that does, that allows everybody to have this focal point. Everybody's on the same page. They can, have some confidence in the fact that it was computer scored and generated, right? It really allows for this very objective perspective of where do we start and how do we know where we're going. So it's a really nice roadmap, and I'm just picking one. I know that there's lots and lots of examples like that, but you'd be surprised how you can convert into the digital world what you got so comfortable doing in the physical world. Right? You just have to look a little bit.
Right. I was a notorious whiteboard user. Even with no plans to use it at all, if it was in the room, I would end up using it. Never failed.
Yeah.
It would just happen. And then moving to things online, I discovered that Zoom had a whiteboard.
Yeah.
So
I
then
mean,
I'd be
again,
using that.
yeah, Zoom, when we're in a clinical space, we have to make sure that our software is HIPAA compliant and encrypted. And so Google Meets, if you sign the BAA, also has that. They have a whiteboard feature now, right? So you're going to see that in different video platforms because video is here to stay, right? When we're talking about the telehealth and the teletherapy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to tools for recovery. And we saw some of these pop up in the Mentee exercise, but what are some recovery tools that you have come across that have seemed very helpful?
Yeah, and I can speak more specifically with the work I've been doing with a lot of individuals over the past year because of the pandemic was very gambling recovery related. And one of my beliefs is that I work with so many individuals. They're younger. Again, we're talking those different generational characteristics. And I say to myself, if they use technology to get into gambling trouble, we're going to use technology to get into gambling recovery. Right. And that way we're staying on the same kind of path for them. It's not necessarily a trigger because they're just so used to technology outside of even the gambling activities. So let's, make that intentional digital use again and give them something to do. So probably my number one go-to are the podcasts. Right? You're able to really help people. I always say feed your soul and, listen to podcasts, listen to other people's stories, listen to what they have to kind of share, listen to how they interpret information, maybe 12 steps or some other, smart recovery, anything like that. And, some of the messages that come through is that they're not alone, that they're not the only ones feeling a certain way. And a podcast is anywhere from, 5 minutes to an hour. And you talk about, how do you fill your time? How do you solve for boredom? When you're going for that walk or that hike, you be intentional about your digital use. Sometimes it's great to listen to music, but sometimes it's really good to hear someone else's story that gives you hope that your life is going to get better. Right. So podcasts are my number one. And you're right. We saw that through some of the what people were sharing already. So the videos, again, some of the TEDx or the TED Talks are super helpful to talk about listening, to people's stories. Find that parents benefit sometimes from watching TED Talks that really help explain a little bit more what it's like to have that disorder or that problematic behavior, that compulsivity, right? So anything like that, I found really helpful for recovery. But again, if anybody has any comments, to throw into the chat outside of what we've already seen from Mentee, would be great. You mentioned Reddit, right? There's a whole thing out there for, gambling recovery. There's different support groups that, moved online, right, during COVID that are probably going to stay online because they break down the geographical barriers. I have some individuals that go to other meetings across different states right now because it's all virtual until they find a meeting that really speaks to them so that they don't have to say, well, the one that's near me that I could drive to, I don't really, it doesn't really resonate with me. They can find another one. So really able to do that. Somebody put in the chat, how do young people find the chats? That's a great question, right?
Do you mean, Jerry, how do they feel about chats or how do they access the chats? I could interpret that a couple of different ways. So we change how we answer that. So let us know a little bit more about what you mean there. But as far as accessing chats, I think this begs a good point that some people might be more prone to access maybe Facebook chats, and others might be more prone for Reddit or YouTube, the chats posted on YouTube videos.
Yeah, or Instagram. You have to look at all the different social media and which generations use which ones, right? Younger generations aren't going to be as likely to go on Facebook as a whole generational group. Not to say they don't, but they're more likely to go on Instagram and, even TikTok and Snapchat and things like that. Right. It's really helpful to make sure that, you're always checking in with people of different generations to see, what they're doing, get curious. And you don't have to always come from that place of knowing it all, that you just say, hey, how do you want to solve for this now that you're not gambling anymore? What's your favorite social media platform, and how did you used to use it? And let's talk about ways that you can use it in a healthier way. And kind of co-create what people can do using technology, as opposed to thinking we have to have all the answers all the time, because technology just changes so fast that we're never going to stay on top of it. I mean, Tana, from the first time we talked till today, we've already mentioned, 16 different things. And, who knows what it's going to be like 6 months from now.
Absolutely. And what kind of babies are these things going to make, right? When this kind of platform merges with this kind of platform and they combine elements and create a whole new kind of experience. I wanted to talk about recovery apps for a minute, because there is so much out there. If you're not familiar with, say, Gamban, it is an app that can help ban that person's phone from online gambling sites. So it's kind of more of a self-monitoring or almost a self-exclusion kind of function. There's recovery apps that are specific to, say, problem gambling or gaming or substance use or mental health. There's recovery apps that are a little bit more general, and it's up to the user to put in what they're using it for and what it is they're wanting to track. There's apps that can track things like quit time from tobacco with gambling free time with healthy eating, all in one kind of thing, kind of healthy behavior trackers. Some of them will also have built in like healthy, like games, like time fillers. Like if someone was filling their free time with a cigarette, there's these quit smoking apps that help fill their free time with different games instead. So they're replacing that cigarette. Same kind of thing with gambling, replacing some time with, instead of getting on their phone and going and doing online gambling, they're getting on their phone and going to a gambling recovery app, and it's giving them different things to do just to fill some time. Or motivational statements, positive affirmations, text services that send people text messages, or you can reply a trigger or craving and it responds back to the person some sort of positive, encouraging statement that kind of is supposed to get them motivated and encourage them to keep on and surf the urge and the craving.
Right.
There's all kinds of them out
there.
There's
all kinds. I have seen some of the most basic, like days counter. The newest one that one person shared with me was called NOMO, N-O-M-O.
Mm-hmm.
And what was really interesting about that was it's for, sobriety in general. It's not specific to one particular type of sobriety. And you're able to really build a sense of, build your community. And so as you're getting closer to your 30 days, your 60 days, your 90 days, your community is cheering you on. But you can also put posts in there and things like that. And, just, is it front and center on your phone, right? Does it show how many days? Not all of us count the days like we used to, because we're used to the whole electronic, calculator figuring it out for us. So these apps are great for that. I have one that I've asked people to check out called I Am, and it's just positive affirmations that show up in the form of a text message, and it's really just those little things, right? And as some things we talk about with like John Gottman's method is small things often, right? How do you do these tiny things, but do them so frequently throughout the day that overall your day is filled with positive affirmations and support messages from people? That adds up and really gives you a much more positive perspective on the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was thinking about YouTube for a second and YouTube videos, and maybe I can pull some of my favorites and share them in the resources, which let me mention. So if you go to the website for this episode, you'll see a bunch of resources, and we will add to that list of other things that happen to come up as we chat. So maybe I can add some of my favorite YouTube videos, but I'll mention that I have played some of these videos or gone to play them, say with a client or a group, and then YouTube puts in an ad.
Yes.
Right? It'll be like a gambling recovery video, but the ad they put is about how to win at gambling.
Yep.
Not cool, right? So just be aware. I just want to mention, proceed with caution, let ads load before you be aware that when you're looking up some of these recovery videos, the kind of ads you get are not exactly the content you're looking for.
But yeah, and you can use that as an opportunity to say, how would you handle this if I wasn't with you? Right?
Exactly.
How would you handle the trigger? Does it create an urge for you? How do you surf that urge? Right? And make it almost like in vivo experience. You're almost living it right then and there. Because again, these things are everywhere. And because of the internet stores everything and remembers everything. It's going to happen. Right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned Gamban, and I'm a huge fan of it because they are actually, as a company, they're not saying they are the end all be all, right? What they're saying is they are one tool of many that people should utilize, so that, as I always say, from the impulsive thought, there's now distance before we act on it. And so, blocking software like Gamban really does slow down the ability to act on that impulsive thought. And then the use of, self-excluding or taking yourself off that, website, which in some states is not as easy as other states because of the way everything's, legislatively been set up, which is why you want multiple tools to help you, so that you really can achieve sobriety or clean time in recovery.
Absolutely. Are there any go-to websites that you really like that you might refer people to or have found as good recovery resources?
That's a great question, because I usually just keep a sheet of them because I can't remember all of them and pull them up. But I know that one that I really, really like, and I use it for people when they're early in the counseling relationship, and I use it for family members, however you define family, and it's called Nuggets. And it walks people through this cartoon of what the euphoria is like, and how then by the time the video ends, it's dark and this cartoon character is just beaten down, and it really shows the progression of any type of addiction. They do it kind of with a chemical, just so you get the idea. But we all know with process addictions, that you don't have to ingest anything first to have that same euphoria and, that pull and that lure back. So Nuggets has been one that I really encourage people to check out and think about using with family members, because it just, sometimes pictures and video convey so much better than a bunch of words. And that's one that I really like. So that would be a good one.
I am a big fan of the Center for Addiction and Mental Health out of Canada. Their learn.problem gambling page, if I'm quoting that correctly, we'll put the link in the resource page after this episode for you. They have a section of self-help for clients and a section for professionals, both filled with amazing, amazing stuff, from worksheets and workbooks and readers to interactive surveys, short screeners, video links, etc. So that's a really good one. As well as there's several support websites as well, be it gamblersanonymous.com, gamanon.com, or org maybe, gamblersinrecovery.com. There's gamequitters.com. There's different treatment facilities often include a lot of resources on their website. If you check out our website, we have a resource sheets which go to a lot of these things, which connect people to a lot of these resources. If you check out our YouTube channel, we have a lot of our guests like Jody and others who have come on and done different educational clips. Some of them are as short as 5 minutes. Some are as long as an hour plus, just depending on what the event is, where you can find lots of educational videos, links to resources.
Yep.
Good stuff.
And, again, it's really hard sometimes to stay on top of all of it. And so it's really helpful to do kind of a creating assignment with your with the people that you're working with, because make it an assignment to do together, or make it where they go and they find specifically go and listen, find 3 podcasts and listen to 3 episodes. And, comment on what you liked, what you were hoping you were going to get out of it, but didn't, anything, because that is so helpful in discussion, in critical thinking, in problem solving, right? And so you don't have to, again, be the master at where are all the resources for absolutely everything all the time, because you won't,
Yeah.
And with 4 different generations, then you have to actually master what each generation is more drawn to. So it can feel pretty overwhelming rather quickly. Yeah. But there's definitely a lot.
And I will say, I'm kind of a resource hoarder. So if anybody wants to just email and be like, hey, Tana, do you know a resource for XYZ? If I do, I will share it with you. Okay. Yeah. I will love to hook people up with different resources or sites that can help them. Let's talk a minute about different tools for the counseling experience that can bring it up to the level of digital interaction that people are kind of used to. What are some tools in counseling services that are available to people?
My favorite has been coaching cards, right? Because what we find is that sometimes we keep looking at a situation only one directional, the same way over and over again. And what I would like to do is I would use these coaching cards to get people to kind of look at it through a different perspective, to help people get unstuck. And so while if I was physically in person, I would have those cards, right? There's also some different websites that would have them virtual. And so I'm going to actually stop sharing one of my screens, and I'm going to share another one, and then we'll bring it up on. All right. Okay. So what you see here is an example of a website called Points of You. Now they have multiple types of coaching cards, and over the COVID time, they have actually done a really cute and small version of all their coaching cards digitally. Now this could be something that I would do during a session, especially if I'm doing it over video, because I could screen share, walk through, help someone kind of process. But the goal of all of this is really to have multiple perspectives on the same issue. So I will, just for the sake of it, kind of go into this so people can see. I'm going to skip the intro because I've seen it. And you can see here, there's 7 different categories that you can explore. Again, helping people get unstuck is usually the easiest way to think about it. And so I'll just pick career because that's kind of an easy one. And I'll say meaningful career. And I want to explore that a little bit more. And so here you see this insightful feedback. What is working for me? What is not working for me? And what is my next step? That's a very helpful way to think about getting unstuck. If I'm really searching, soul searching about career and how do I find something that's much more meaningful and purposeful. So just going through this, and this is completely random. Sometimes I say it's divine, and you just let the software kind of get playful with it, right? So you can click any of these little circles at any time and it brings up a card. And notice this card, I'm going to choose it and it puts it back on this layout. And it says, what is working for me? And you see this picture and you see this word. They don't always go together at the first time you look at it. But in this case, this is a picture of walking in the desert in the sand. It looks like forever, right? And the word is persistence. So you could really understand how you could process for yourself or with someone else, to find a meaningful career, keep being persistent. It's going to pay off. But then we want to explore maybe where we're getting stuck and what's not working in our pursuit of meaningful career philosophically, right? So we'll just pick another card, right? Choose that card and it says timing. And yet, look at this picture. It's a bird that would be landing on the handle of a shovel that is sitting upright. Like you have to have some pretty good timing to make that happen. And so maybe for this person thinking about a meaningful career, they're not accepting that the timing might just take a little bit longer than they had first thought or wanted, right? And so to maybe alter their perspective about timing of this meaningful career. And then the last one, which again, you can see that this can be helpful, fun, playful. You choose another card to answer like, what is my next step? And this card says doing, right? And it's got 2 balls of yarn and it shows, knitting something. So here you could get understand that maybe what you need to do is just keep doing your pursuit. And right there, it's affirming, it's a new perspective. It maybe gives people permission not to be so focused on the timing of that career and to let it naturally happen, or to kind of, explore and maybe, find a mentor, anything like that, but to just keep doing things in pursuit of a meaningful career. So as you can see from the demonstration, wow, there's a lot that I just helped someone process related to a meaningful career.
And I love how you could have 2 different people, if it happened to work out, they each pick these 3 cards and could interpret these things completely differently.
That's
right.
Exactly
it's going to be in relationship to their experience and what's going on in their life in that moment, what it means to them.
Yep, that's exactly it. And, I've found that for some people, maybe you have to choose a different card because that one really doesn't resonate with them and they're struggling to make sense of it. I've been using points of view for, I don't even want to admit how long. It's never failed. It is such a well thought out, just awesome product that you can use so many different ways. You could even just ask a client to say, pick a card, because I don't know if you noticed, there's an option to like turn all the cards face up. And you can let the client, or however you refer to them, pick the card that they can say, this is what's working for me, this is what's not working for me. And I think this is what my next step is. And that in and of itself of taking action to pick those cards gets them unstuck or gives them hope that there are other ways to look at the same situation. So this is a keeper. I would strongly recommend for a lot of individuals to check this out.
Nice. And I could see this being useful as a family activity.
I mean, people could go on and on with what to share, right? And how to use it and how to process. I've done it in corporate coaching sessions. I've done it in clinical sessions. I've done it where it was kind of an icebreaker, and I asked people to pick a card that best represented their predominant mood for the day. You know, you can, again, it's got a lot of different uses. So.
Excellent. Excellent. Is there anything else with points of view you wanted to show us?
No, I think that's all. I think it's worth, asking people to just go check out their website. You can play the cards over and over again, the different categories, and just, give it a whirl.
I like it. I like it. And if anyone has other ideas for counseling, interactive tools you'd like to share, please feel free to put it in the chat. We're going to wrap up here in just a minute. But Jody, is there anything else that has come across your desk over the years that has stuck out to you as a really useful tool that you think, man, more people need to know about this or use this, or not just a specific tool, but a type of practice?
I tried to give you the most, all the ones that I use, and I have been really using a lot during the pandemic when everything was 100% virtual, and we know that a lot of things are continuously coming on the market. And so, what I tell people, just try things and get comfortable with them. Just that points of view is a great example of the numerous ways you can use it with so many different audiences, with different topics, all of that. So I just encourage everybody to start somewhere and stay curious, and keep your eyes out for it, because what works for me might not work for someone else, but they might have an equally great tool that works for them that doesn't fit for what I have to do or need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really important for people to not feel intimidated by the technology stuff. Generally, as long as you're not hitting add or submit or putting in your credit card or social security, you can stay out of a lot of trouble accidentally, right? So it's just getting out there and exploring around what's out there, doing Google searches, doing YouTube searches, pull up your phone, go to your app store, search for something you think might lead you to some good stuff, and see where it takes you. Find out what's out there. And if you're a little bit nervous getting used to it, just play with it a little bit, and you can then help your clients maybe to overcome some of that nervousness, to find something that they really find helpful and that really adds a positive element to their life and can be used in a very healthy way for them. So
exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. Like I said, we will be putting more resources on the website for this. So check back there by the end of the week, and we'll have some more of these links that we referenced there for you so you can access them easily.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great discussion.
Thank you. Bye.